Okay. What I suggest we do is try and focus on limited sections of the film, scene selections, because one of the assignments, one of the essays that you can do, if you wish, will be to look at, say, 3 minutes of the film and to write a very close analysis, very close description of those 3 minutes. Okay, so that's what we're going to practice doing now. I'd like to take one to begin with, and I'd like to talk it through with you. I'm going to pause it as we do this and talk it through with you. And then I'm going to play another scene later on, and I'm going to ask you in 2s and 3s to do an analysis of this, a description of this yourself. Okay? So first of all, I'm going to talk this one through with you. And this is the same scene I showed you before, because seeing it more will make it easier for you to see what's happening. And we're going to look at about, I think, 3.5 minutes or something like that. Just 3.5 minutes, but I'm going to pause it on the way. Now, the time of year is probably August, and Frank has just come back from his holiday. Where has he been on his holiday? Remember? You saw him on his holiday. Where did Frank go on his holiday?
France.
Yes, that's right. He went to somewhere, a beautiful place in France, and he went with his awful head of department and his girlfriend and so on. And when he was there, he spent his time waiting for Rita's letters. It's very unbelievable, this, but he waited for letters to come from England, where she was in her summer school. And now he's just about to meet her, where she has been at the summer school. She's just coming back from the summer school, and he's gone to pick her up at the station. What do you think he's thinking? What do you think he's feeling or thinking just now?
Happy, very excited to meet her again.
Yes, okay, because he's happy to see her. He's missed her during the summer. He obviously cares about her a lot, and he's also excited about what she's been doing because she's learnt so much. Yes, okay. And they're on the station in Liverpool, where they live, and she's just about to arrive. Do you remember I told you to look at her clothing as well? So watch now. Right, just pause for a second. So in the section I showed you, the beginning of this sequence, you see Frank first of all. And we thought about his expectation of what would happen. And then, as if from his point of view, we see her arriving. What does she look like when we see her? How's she dressed? Is she unhappy? Is she happy? Can you tell me? Go on.
Happy.
Yes, okay. And what's she wearing? What does she look like? Funky? She looks very different from the way she did at the beginning of the film, doesn't she? When she had stiletto heels, high heels, and dyed hair and so on. Now she's got longer hair. She looks more like a student. What's she carrying? What's she carrying?
Racket.
Yes. So what's the significance of the tennis racket that she's carrying? Do you think she played tennis when she was living in Liverpool with her husband? No. Okay. So there's a certain class connotation to that, right? As well. And you see the clothing she's wearing, that's nothing like the clothing when she was wearing the miniskirt and first came into the university. So that's all established this, and then first of all we saw them walking towards us along the platform. So there was a strong sense of the story moving forward, of excitement at what she'd been doing. And then there was a slight shift of angle. She came out of the station and the camera was like this, looking down as they walk across. So there's a slight distancing from them at that point. And then they get to his car, and it's a kind of, his car carries a message. It's kind of a little bit old-fashioned for this time, but it's also an open top car, so it's kind of free thinking and easy and so on. And he goes to the trunk, the boot of the car, opens the boot. I've got a present for you. What is it? Cigarettes, okay, duty-free cigarettes. You understand? Okay, and she says, I gave up. That's good, isn't it? It's good to stop smoking. I gave up. Okay, so how do you think he reacts to her smoking, first of all? She's given up smoking. How does he react to that?
Unexpected and too disappointed.
Why would he be disappointed?
Because she acts almost the different way he thinks.
Okay, do you remember when she first came into the story, when we first saw her, they had a cigarette together, and he said, she said, so many people have given up today, frightened of cancer, bloody cowards. So she's making fun of the people who give up. So it's quite a reversal of what you expect to hear, but he likes that because it shows her spirit and so on. Now, what you said, she's changed so much, hasn't she? And in what way does the film direct our reactions to this? In what way does the film direct our reactions to this? It's a question. How are our reactions directed? Do you sympathise with her? I mean, she looked very happy when she said, I've given up smoking. Or do you sympathise with him? Do you see things from her point of view or from his point of view? Why then? Yeah, can you say?
Because of the music.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Which is what? Describe the music, please.
It's a little bit sad. Not very sad, but not in a very bright tune.
No. Okay, so we've got it, I think it's in a minor key, isn't it, the music that comes in. And even before the music starts, we've got that low bass note, like a pulse, but the pulse is going a little bit too fast. So it suggests a certain tension. So that's aligned, that's brought our reaction towards his reaction. The film's leading us in this way. Now, I think what we're doing is describing what we're hearing. Can you see that? We're not applying a theory, we're describing what we're hearing and seeing. And she gives him a present. That's a good thing, isn't it? Look, I bought you a present. What's his reaction? You understand it's a pen and it says, for writing poetry, by strictest order. What's his reaction to that? Kensuke? He finds it funny. Normally it's nice to be given a present. So probably he's pleased to some extent. But is he just pleased? You think he's just pleased? I think it's
A very subtle feeling.
a subtle feeling. What? Say some more then. Describe it.
Yeah, of course he feels pleasant to receive a present, and it was a pen, so an expectation,
All right.
but
Yes.
not a surprise.
Okay. And if she says to him, you must write poetry, how does he feel about that? Is he going to write poetry now? No. So it's a kind of feeling of not being understood, perhaps? This won't make him write poetry. Receiving a pen won't make him write poetry. So there's a slight feeling that she's trying to be dominant and that it won't really affect him. So he feels separated from her, I think. And they drive off towards the park. Okay. So you see that the camera angle changed several times, so that we saw her face or his face. Sometimes when she was speaking, we looked at his face because the camera wanted us to pay attention to his reaction. And you also see the subtle shifts, subtle changes in his expression, very, very skillful acting, very slight changes. If you're standing on a stage, you make grand gestures on the stage. Everything has to be big because you can't see it close. But when the camera's like this, a tiny change, the raising of an eyebrow, will make a big difference. And clearly the camera is drawing attention to him and his reaction rather than her. She's confident, she's happy, she knows all this, and you see him very doubtful about the way she's responded. So when she says, "You don't do Blake without doing songs of innocence and experience, do you?" It's as though she's read and understood the whole thing, no trouble. She knows all the theories about Blake and songs of inexperience. But has she really attended to it in the way that he has? Perhaps not. She knows the theories, but has she really responded? So it's the attention that she lacks, and that's what he gives. And songs of innocence and experience. She's got experience of a kind because now she knows it all. She understands all this. But if you look at his face, you see the kind of disillusionment that comes with experience, his disappointment in what's happened to her, in the kind of monster that she becomes, the Frankenstein type monster. Okay? So that's the kind of thing where close description of what you see, including the techniques, I think enhances our understanding of what's happening. I don't think that attention to cameras and angles and so on blocks our response. I think it enriches it. Okay. Any questions about that? Do you mind just helping me again, or one of you? Is there any scene you would like to see again, in particular? Okay, so we're going to watch just 3 minutes or so, and then I'm going to ask you together to describe how this effect is created. Okay, in the same way that I just did. So you may want to make a few notes, I don't know, but watch very carefully for camera angles, how the viewer's response is being shaped by this. Would you like to switch so that you talk to somebody else this time? Okay? Don't talk to exactly the same people as last time. So. Okay, shall we share some ideas now? You ready? Okay, so Sanae or Shun?
We talk about windows and
This window?
both,
Oh.
and we thought the window is a metaphor of distance. They want to distance over the things or human they interest in.
Okay, just tell me which windows you're referring to, because I can think of a couple, I think. There's this one which is maybe a doorway looking out. There's a window on the left and a doorway looking out to their yard or garden. Which other windows did you see? Yes, that's right. Yes, yes, good. Frank's room has got a window, hasn't it? At the end of the sequence that you saw, we were in Frank's room in the university, and he walked towards the window and looked out. What could he see? What could he see? What could he see? 何を見ましたか? Yes. Okay. Okay. Fine. So say something more about windows. You say they're separators or what? They separate us?
Separate us and distance.
Okay. Yes.
And one more thing, Shun said when the camera work close up a person, the situation changed the person's view to the person they is focused to view. Sorry, I try again.
Shun, do you want to say it?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
If the scene focus on somebody, the same time the situation changing, the view of the viewpoint of the movie changed.
Okay. Okay. So the camera directs us to the viewpoint of the person we see close up. Okay. And can you give an example from the sequence? The sequence is the 3 minutes you've just seen. Okay, that's the sequence of the film you've seen. Is there an example of a close-up?
Example, first, the husband, first viewpoint is husband's view.
Yes.
And then close up the reader, and studying reader was close up, and from then the viewpoint changes.
Okay.
Reader's one.
Right. Thank you very much. Then, Kosuke, would you like to take over? You say something, if you'd like to.
We talked about two things. One, about this. Our point.
Yes, please go ahead.
We talked about two things, and one is about the camera work in the scene of the husband found out the pill and walked downstairs. The position of two was like the father was standing and Rita was sitting, looking down. So the father slightly look kind of dominant, and we can clearly see the husband's face, but we cannot see the Rita's face, not so clear because she's looking down. Yeah. So it may be expressive about something. And other one is the burning scene, and she found that burning scene expresses the reader's feeling of like getting something bad feeling inside her is also burning inside her. That is the kind of sense of guilty because she is hiding something behind her husband, and finally he found out, so she doesn't have to hide anymore. So that's why the music is not so tragic, because it sounds a bit happier, maybe, like it's not like a only minor sense.
May I add something to what Kosuke said? I actually didn't use the word guilty, but in the last scene, the fire was closed up, and then Rita's face, I think, came afterwards. And then we were discussing about that scene, and then the word I used was not specifically, well, yes, I didn't use the word guilty, but we found that the music in the background was not quite tragic either, and then it was more like the scene with music and the camera work were representing a sort of purification and sublimation of Rita's feeling and then her emotional state.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Well, yes.
Okay.
So yes. So in that sense, that scene didn't appear so much as a tragedy, but it's more like, yes.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So, does someone know it, or Kazuna, or do you want to speak?
Okay, a very interesting thing I found is the volume of the music. Yeah, when as we can see from the scene, when the factor that Rita tried to how to say that being avoided from being pregnant, when she's found, the music starts, and as she and her husband started to fighting, the volume was turned up, and turned up, and finally, when her books were burned up, the volume comes to the peak. Okay, and the next scene, when the camera shifted to Frank, the volume is. The volume of the music is getting getting little. Yeah, it's turning down.
Yes.
And when the camera will change to read again, the volume then becomes more clear. Yeah. Okay. That's my opinion. Okay.
We are talking about the meaning of fires. In this scene, I think fire means two meanings. Fire has two meanings. One is her sorrow, because her husband threw her books into fire. At the same time, camera focused on her face, and the fire reflects on her face, her body, which means that I think her inner passion to study more.
Okay. When you say the fire reflects on her body, can you describe that more? How is that achieved? I think you said the fire reflects on her body. How do we see that? It's a rather clever shot in the film. Can you explain?
Through the window.
Yes.
Shadow overlap with her face.
Yes. I think probably that's what you meant. She's behind the window and the fire's out here, and the fire catches the glass.
Yeah.
So you see the fire against her body. I'll show you again in a minute and you'll be reminded. Okay, so I like the fact that you talked about the kind of associations of fire. Would anybody like to say something more about the associations or symbolism of fire? What does fire mean? Can anybody say some more about that? Yes. So destruction is a very good thing, a very obvious thing. Yes, that's right. What else can it mean? Yes, say it loud.
Actually, it's
Kazunao.
opinion.
Say it loud.
Well,
What she said? Passion.
passion, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we talk about, I don't know if you do this in Japanese, but fires of passion? Would you say that? Okay. So who has fires of passion in the story? What for? For learning, okay? Yes. So we've got two very strong things here, the symbolism of destruction and also passion for learning. What's Denny doing there? That's Denny's her husband. What's he doing? This is the start of the sequence. What's he burning?
I guess the wall of the room.
Yes.
Before that scene,
Rita.
destroys the wall.
Yes, yes.
And she and her husband reconcile
Yes.
in the wall.
Yes.
And I guess he's burning that wall.
Yes. So is he doing something good or something destructive?
Something good.
Yes. Okay. So it's rubbish. You want to clear it away. What's he building?
Building.
Yes.
Building the fire.
Well, he's building a fire. Yeah, but what else is he doing? He's clearing rubbish away. And what's he going to do in the house?
To reform.
To refurbish it, to reform it. And he's going to make a big room. Okay? So what does that show about his attitude to his home and family? What does it... He's burning rubbish, clearing it away, good thing to do, and he's working on the house. What does that show you about his attitude to his home?
Intimacy with
Yes.
his husband.
His intimacy with his family and his hopes for staying there and having a family there and so on. So he cares about the home. So this is a good thing he's doing. Okay? And that forms a contrast with what happens in a minute's time. Because then he starts burning the books. So can you see the way that draws a contrast between his hope to build a nice home and her hope to read books, to be educated? You see how the contrast comes together? And in the end, those two things cannot survive together. Okay, so what about the burning of the books? What did you think of that? The burning of the books. Her books which she has borrowed from Frank. Chekhov's plays, great Russian playwright. So you see the book, and you see the flame coming to the edge of the book and then crumpling the paper, and a page is burned, then another page and another page. How do you react to that? Who burns books? Denny in here, yes. But coming out of the film, who might burn books?
Irrational people.
Well, they could, in a sense, yes.
King.
Yeah, the king. Yes. Why would they do it?
Maybe not let people think wrong.
Yes. Okay. So when Emile was first written, it was burned. Rousseau's Emile was burned because it was blasphemous. This happens in many countries, especially repressive countries. The books are not allowed, and sometimes symbolically they are burned. Okay? Do you get the idea? So it's a destruction of education. So of course, Denny's a simple working class man. He's not intending all that, but it's horrific what he does symbolically. Okay, let's have some more comments. Yuri, would you like to say something? Yes.
We are talking about the background music, and we both feel like it's not suitable or a little bit unmatching to the scene. And it's the replies.
It's what?
Replies. Replaces. Yeah, replaces. And from the beginning of this, I guess it's from the beginning. And the music is some opening music.
It's sort of, I think it symbolized a new beginning in the tune itself, because it's not. At first, I don't feel it's right at that scene because the accident happened between them are not good, at least. But the music is not heavy. It's more bright, and you can feel something new begin there, and when the music continues through the scene and shift through the scene in the house, and the scene in the university, and the music continues.
Okay, so something is stirring, something's moving, something's changing.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Okay, would you like to say something?
We are also talking about the window. Kensuke said when Rita was crying behind the window, then fire reflects on the window. So we don't see the fire directly. We saw the fire in indirect. So the image of fire becomes obscure. So Rita's crying and the image becoming obscure is metaphor of her feeling.
Yes, okay. That's very good the way you describe that. Thank you. Anything further?
Adding to his point, I think the camera work is interesting in this scene. In the scene which Rita looking the fire through the window, because she doesn't look the fire directly, and there is a window between her and fire, and when the camera shows burning scenes, it is clearly depicted, but the perspective is not hers. But when the camera shows her in the screens, the fire is on the windows and very obscure. So there is a different perspective.
Okay. No, it's very interesting, especially when you talk about the reflection of the fire. I think that's fascinating. It's making me think about Plato's cave a little bit as well, but I don't know whether that was intended in this. What about the ending of the scene and the ending of the sequence that I showed you? Sequence is the word for the 3 minutes or whatever it was, all right, that sequence of scenes. So after seeing her face behind the window, we then go to Frank's office. What about that scene?
Frank looking down from his office, then he find Rita alone. So I think looking down is means Frank is the educated person. So this height.
You've said it very well, that he's looking down from that room. Think how different it would be if his office was on the ground level. So the perspective of looking down is very interesting, yes. And what does he feel about her when he sees her there?
No more. He's just
He looks happy, a little happy to see her in the yard of his university, and I think she dressed a little bit different before, different than she was dressed before. It's a bit slight change in her situation.
Yes. And I think her hair is a natural colour now, whereas it was dyed blonde at the beginning. Okay, that's true. And of course she's subdued now, isn't she? When he goes down to see her. So what does he say to her? Do you remember? I turned it off, but do you remember what he says to her?
you always rush up to
Yes.
my office, so why are you here?
Something like that. Yes, that's right. And just to remind you, she then says, for a start, she doesn't say anything because she's upset. Then she says that her husband's burnt her books, or she hasn't got her essay. She hasn't got her essay. And he says, don't tell me. A group of Cambridge professors came to your house and they stole your essay. Do you remember him saying that? Yeah. Okay, so he makes light of it, not realizing what's happened. Okay, and then he, of course, is disillusioned by that. One of the ways the film works is with contrast. So plainly, there's a contrast between this working class house and in a poor area of town and the beautiful university buildings. What contrast did the film use at the start of the sequence, of this sequence? Do you remember? So you see this right at the beginning, and then what do you see? Right, I'll remind you. It goes backwards and forwards. Denny, and then Rita in the street, thinking about her work. Then Denny, and then Rita in the street. Then Denny going upstairs, and Rita in the street. And then Rita comes in, she's sitting down. Then he comes down with the packet of pills. And while we think about packets of pills, if you take the pill, it's to stop having a baby. In what other sense is a baby being stopped in this sequence? Rita wants to stop having a baby in the literal sense, and Denny wants to stop a different kind of baby. Can you make sense of that? I think Rita is having a baby, but not a literal baby. She's having a baby in what sense? Intellectually, yes, that's right. So she's discovering, she's finding something new in the books. He wants to kill that, he wants to stop that, and she wants to stop the natural baby. So we've got a big conflict between them. A different sense of what matters, a different sense of home. So when you look at a sequence, you can say, how does this short sequence move the story or the plot forward? How does it move the plot forward? And what it does is to show a break between them. This is a very severe thing that he does. So it's these just 3 minutes, they've taken the story forward in an important way. And we kind of know they're going to split up now. You said it's purging something, didn't you? Yes, purging means cleansing something. So in a sense, this is a problem that has to come out. They need to split up. And she's now released. They are released from this. He can get happily married to a woman who will have a baby, and she can go and pursue her education. So there is something purging or cleansing about this. Okay, I'm going to play it again because I think you'll, having discussed it, you'll see a bit more in it. Could you turn the light off again, please? Whoever did it. I noticed something I'd never seen before. Then when she's standing behind the window and you see the flames on the glass, behind the flames is something else that you see briefly, and it's the saucepans on the cooker. that's the life that Denny would like her to have, being in the kitchen. And that's the one that she wants to burn. She wants to be in the university. So it's just something else that's layered on. Meaning all the time. Lots of meanings in everything you see. Right. Having looked at those 3 minutes, does that help you to appreciate it, or does it get in the way of appreciating it? Does it help you to experience what's going on? Does it increase the experience, or does it stop it because you are looking at things in a technical way? This is the question that you raised earlier on, I think, didn't you? I think so. I find that richer to see it like that. Okay, shall we start, please? I think it's going to be easier to look at scenes from the film first, okay? And I'd like to just do this the way we did it before the break time and show you a short sequence, then ask you to talk about it amongst yourselves before we share some thoughts. But I'm just going to tell you where we are in the film. This is the beginning of the film. There were rather a long list of credits initially, and then we go from this screen to one other, then the film starts. But do look at the credits as well, because they're part of the film. So consider what you're seeing now, and then I'm not sure how many minutes I'm going to play you, but it's a little sequence of events. Okay? You'll remember the film has two locations, two main locations. One is London, an expensive part of London, and the other is Italy, the singing teacher's room, and then Lake Como in the north of Italy. Okay, so think about that in relation to the atmosphere you see in this sequence. Okay, that's it. So please, in your 2s or 3s, talk about what you've just seen. Oh, I think it's okay. Okay. Okay, can we stop now, please? Just tell me who would like to start off to tell us something about the sequence you've seen. What do you see at the start of the sequence?
We saw the man putting light on the gas light on the road.
So you see a lamppost with
Yes,
that's right.
yeah,
And he lights that. Yes.
and we feel time slipped to the ancient, not ancient, but past age.
Yes, so even though the film is 1948, I think, it's made in 1948, but even for the film, it goes back 50 years or something.
Yes. So we didn't know the film is produced when the film is produced, but it's the cinema.
Yes.
So we guess, there is the light or something else. So the gas is more past.
Okay, sure. All right, can you tell me more about Gaslight? Because that's the title of the film.
Yes.
Can you say more about Gaslight?
We saw.
In relation to the film?
We saw the fire in monochrome. So we said about the fire is passion about in the educating Rita, but we can't see color. So we don't feel passion or something like with fire. Only like ghost or mysterious one. あとなんだっけ vein, something vein with fire. She said vein. 虚しい儚い V-A-I-N.
Yes, I hear the word, but it doesn't fit.
Life is so short.
Ah. Oh, so the suggestion of death, life is so short. Okay, yes. Yes. Okay, so still on gaslight, then we're seeing the lighting of the lamps, the gas lamps. Can you tell me more about gas in the film? Because the film's called Gaslight. So why is it significant in the film?
That's right.
Yes, if you like to. And do you have something to say about Gaslight?
Yes.
Do you have? Yes, go on, please.
When she went out her home, the man turned off the gas light, and they were in the car cab.
Yes.
And this means that their Paula is go to her future.
Yes.
So the meaning of turn off the light, turn off the gas light, is to go future. But at the same time, if the gas light turn off, the time in her house stops. So.
Do you mean it's frozen?
Frozen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the turn off the light. To turn off the light has two meanings, I think.
Yes. Or frozen or suspended.
Yes.
Not paused. Yes. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Any more on Gaslight still? Yes.
According to his view, this is because why this is because why Paula be scared to gaslight turn to dark when his husband searching on the loft.
What did you say?
I
Yeah.
think she mean Dick in the I think in later sequence.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
In the later, Paula is very scary. More unnecessary fear for. So.
How old is Paula?
After she married.
No, when you see her in this scene. How old? Can you guess? Say a number.
So I'm sorry.
How old is
she? After she married. Before?
Before. Just the scene. Now.
She looks under 20.
Under 20, yes, okay, yes. I think she's made to look about 16. Something like that. And she's lost her past, hasn't she? She's lost her past. Okay. Right, thank you. Anybody else on gas light? Yes, go on.
The gas light is more blurred than compared to electric light, so that it makes the border between the dark place and lightened place ill-defined, like more unclear.
Very good.
So it makes it I think reflects her mind, also the Paula's mind, or the state of mind, which is more stupefaction. No, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce this word.
Stupefaction.
Yes, stupefacted.
Stupefacted.
Yes.
Okay, stupefied.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing you said especially was really good, that the gaslight itself is softer, so that the definitions of things are not so clear. And that's how we feel about the relationships too, isn't it? It's not so clear. Okay, that's really good. And how there's a technical way in which gaslight is different from electric light, and this is something that is thematized later in the film, a technical way. Can you explain that, Naomi?
Not sure if I'm right, but you can, like in town, as to the electric light, we can manage to turn off and turn on. However, gas light, oh yes, we can control. I don't know. I've never used gas light, so I'm not quite sure. But is it? I'm not quite sure. Is it automatically turned by someone else?
I think it went through different stages. But at some stages, certainly someone had to light with a flame, which is what you see the lighters in the street doing. And then in the house, I think that was also true. I can just remember this, actually. But there's another factor about it, in that the light in this room is unaffected by the light outside. Whereas with gaslight, there's only so much pressure in the house, so that if many lights are turned on, the level goes down. And can you see how that has an almost symbolic importance? As though the gaslight is like energy. So if someone takes energy over there, our energy goes down. Okay? And I think in Cavell's discussion, it's almost like sexual energy as well, that when that as though he, Gregory, is drawing energy away from her. Vampirish in a way. He's drawing energy away from her. Okay. And actually, I asked you what the beginning was, and you saw something before you saw the lamplight in that sequence. You saw something before you saw the lamplighter. What was it? What I showed you. Do you remember? Oh, the newspaper's just after. You do see shadows, but even before that. So the credit, it said produced by, and then directed by George Cukor. But when you saw those names, what was behind the names? Yes. So there was, I think, wallpaper, patterned wallpaper, and then on the left side there was one gaslight fixed on the wall. So already there's the suggestion of this theme that's to run through it. Okay, you said shadows, didn't you? Do you want to say some more about that?
In that scene, shadow on the wall, then this implies the murder.
So the shadow on the wall amplifies or recalls the murder. Yes? Okay, yes. And I don't know if it's the same sequence you're thinking of, but when the man comes out of the house. He's got a top hat on, yes? And then the shadow of the top hat is bigger than the hat itself. So that's very sinister, isn't it? Covering the door with shadow. Okay, good.
Another one we are talking about when Paula get on the car, and the man turned off the gas light in the house, but not Paula, the man does turn off the light. When Paula and Gregory come to the house again, maybe Gregory turned on the gas light. Really? So Paula never turn on or off gas light.
Really? Okay. Very good, if you're right. That's great. Well done. Do you remember I used the word chiaroscuro? Chiaroscuro, it's Italian, and this bit means dark, obscure, dark, and this bit means clear, chiaro, clear, clear dark, chiaroscuro. It's a term in painting, and it's a term in painting where a painter uses a sharp contrast between dark and light. So the I think 17th century painter Caravaggio used this technique a lot, this sharp contrast. If you look at the sequence you've just looked at, there were some occasions when there was a clear chiaroscuro effect. Can you remember any? A light-dark contrast.
No.
Can you remember? Yes? In that sequence?
When Paula got into the car, apparently her face was constantly lighted.
Yeah.
And other things seems like dark. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very apparently contrast that.
Okay, yes. It's the same effect you saw in the glass of milk scene in Hitchcock as well, chiaroscuro effect. And you've said that very well. So the highlight, her face is highlighted. And sometimes you see her in that sort of angle, and her face is kind of pensive, thoughtful, something bad has happened, she doesn't know what will happen. And sometimes you see her more in a cameo shot from the side, in profile as well. Okay, so clearly when the light is on her face, it kind of signals to us that this is the person who's the center of the story. This is the one we must watch. Okay? What else? Anything more? What's the weather like? What's the weather like? So, well, how do you imagine the weather? Do you think it's 30 degrees? Or? A little bit cooler than that, yes. And probably damp. Yeah, probably damp, wet. Yes, a bit wet. It wasn't raining, but somehow dampness in the air and fog as well. There's suggestions of fog, which goes with the softness of the light that you talked about. Okay.
And then it was suggested that they were going to Italy.
Yes.
The country
of contrast, that's right, yes. And they're going to see Signor Guardi. Do you remember I pointed out that Guardi means guard or guardian, someone who looks after things. So the maestro, the singing teacher, is Signor Guardi. Okay, so it suggests she's going to a safe place where she'll be looked after and she'll be able to develop her talent. Okay, and of course it turns out to be different. Do you want to see it again, or can I show you something else, or what? Just move on?
For me, it would be nice to watch it
It would, okay. Okay, we didn't say anything about the music, but obviously the music is to suggest something scary, disturbing, that something troubling is going to happen. Okay. Can I move on to another sequence then? Okay, so I hope this won't take too long to go through. Thank you. I'm sorry it was a longer sequence than I expected, but it's difficult to know where we are in the film without a counter. Do you want any reactions to that, please, having seen it for the second time? Do you have any reactions to it? Do you want to say anything about it?
I just want to ask the same question. I think I have just asked the other day that there is this scene, just this scene. In this scene, Gregory was explaining her that I was absorbed in the jewel. I don't know why, yes. And you may not believe me. He explained the exact thing to her, but I don't know why he was explaining it to her. I think I asked the same question, but I still can't get it.
So do you understand the question then? Why is it that Gregory bothers to say that to her? Why does he say that to her about the jewels? Why does he give an explanation? Anybody have any comments on that?
Not quite sure if I'm responding to your question, but I saw, we saw a difference or differences in Paula's attitude in these sequences, but at the same time, I wonder if Gregory also changed by seeing Paula changed as she started her own. She started conversation with her own words, so that he was responding with his own words. So he wanted to. Well, I'm not quite sure why he said that he was fired by the jewelry, yes. But then he doesn't know why, but he just wanted to tell that to her because that's the reality for him. But I don't know why he was fired by the jewelry.
So there are two questions. Why is he drawn by the jewels? Why is it like a fire for him? And then why does he tell her this? Yes. Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Yes, go on. Good.
I think it's my opinion. I think he helped something to her because he noticed he is mad, and always he talk about you are mad to their wife, Paula. But he always know. In the truth, he is mad, and he know such a thing. So he helped her to her. He want to help to her, finally.
And that fits in with what Nami said, to the extent that this is the first time she's spoken in her own voice, and now he is able to tell her something about his own madness. And that earlier he was projecting his madness onto her and saying she was mad. Okay? Okay. Anybody else?
And in the museum, at another scene, he said about the jewel. It's, I don't know the exact English words, but ikimono, so living, it's living.
The jewel is living. Okay, really, very observant. Okay, okay. is it partly an explanation for the audience? That he tells, so the film tells us what to think. It rounds the story. You see, it tells us what to think, and that fits in with what you've been saying. I agree. It's still a bit strange that he tells her. Do you have any view about that?
Probably it shows toward the end, eventually Gregory and Paula had a equal conversation.
Yes, that's what Nami was pointing to, I think, something like that. Yes. Kind of strange way to go about getting to a conversation with your wife, isn't it? Okay. One or two of you then asked me to go over some of this, and I'm assuming that it's the central part about the R and the G, the red and the green. I'm thinking that's what you want to look at, because I started with this image from David Hockney, which shows a painting of movement where the movement is frozen. Obviously this is relevant to film, because film shows us movement, doesn't it? A still painting doesn't show movement, it's just the same all the time, but a film by definition shows movement, deals with movement. So in David Hockney's painting, the question was stillness and movement, what do we see? And David Hockney says we never see this, because you see the movement as a whole. You don't see this over the water, you see the movement as a whole. And I said, well, actually that's not quite true. We do see this, the water suspended, because you see photographs. You don't see it in the natural world, but photographs do show you something like this. And then I showed you that picture made up of mechanical segments of time. Every hour or half hour, a picture is taken. Okay? Any instance, whatever. And that gives you a kind of continuity, as if from dawn until night. And then I talked about Lego, and it should say red and green, not black and white, of course. Now, why talk about Lego? Lego provides an image for a certain way of thinking about reality, as though reality is made up of simple building blocks. Reality is very complicated. Something that's complicated must be reducible to simple building blocks, just as the chemical substance of this room can be broken down to atoms. Okay, I'm describing a way of thinking, and it's a way of thinking that has a common sense basis to it, and it's also one that was theorized by, for example, Bertrand Russell in the early 20th century, that there are atomic facts, basic building blocks to reality. And then I asked you to think of just two kinds of basic building block, red ones and green ones, and we can imagine building something with red blocks. So every red block is exactly the same. I've said they're 32 millimeters square, same size as some film, 32 millimeters square. And we could put them together in a long line. We could build like that. So the long line, or the tower, if you like, is made up of units that are all identical. That would be a way of thinking of reality in terms of basic building blocks. But then I said to you, they're not identical, because you can see this one quite clearly, and I think you can count the second and the third and the fourth, but I doubt if you can count this one very easily. Your eyes will blur as you look across. And so when you look at that line, you don't see lots of little independent units, you see a flow of movement across that line. So this is to say that our natural way of seeing the world is not with units, individual building blocks, but in flows of movement. The diving into the pool, the movement that even a simple pattern like that produces. It becomes clearer if we put in a variation in the pattern. One, then the other, then one, then the other. And I said to you that sometimes is how effects are achieved in film. And then if we make a more irregular pattern, it's as though it picks up speed, it gathers speed, speed increases towards the green as we move across. So, I started off by giving a picture of reality as made up of individual units added together, and then I pushed that picture aside by saying you don't see individual units, you see movement along a line. And this becomes clearer as you go down to the example here, and here, and here. And if we take a section of this movement, like that, you see lots of red ones. If I do that, it's different, and that's different again, and that's different again, and so on. So each one of those sections I just took had a pattern of movement in it. So our building blocks for reality are not individual units like this, rather they are ways in which we are affected by what we see and perceive. And these are mobile in character. And so we had the two images. We can think of objects or individual units gathered in sets, all the red ones, all the green ones, and then you have a picture of immobile sections. A Lego piece cannot be changed. It can be moved about, but it itself cannot be changed, just as the railway line has wooden pieces that are identical and proceed in that kind of pattern. And Deleuze contrasts that, or it's Bergson originally, contrasts that with a simple process like dissolving sugar, where there is a process of change involving at least two things, or three things, the glass, the water, and the sugar, and maybe involving a fourth, a spoon that stirs and quickens the process. So to think in the right way is to think in terms of relations, of things already in movement, of movement as the providing the sections rather than immobile pieces. It's to think in terms of qualitative change and affect and duration. So when we watch a film clip, the way we start and the way we end isolates a particular sequence, and you see a pattern of movement in that sequence. If you shift the time period, start a minute later and end a minute later, the pattern you see is different again. And this is a constant variation of possibilities. I don't know if that means any more to you today than it did on Tuesday. But that, I think, is what Deleuze is concerned with. And he sees film as realizing this, as making it vivid in a way that earlier forms of thought did not. Film enables us to think this.
So maybe what you have just mentioned has relevance to what you mentioned about what Hyun in Gibbs' article, there was a sentence which was like, I forgot the exact sentence, but you said something like, Hyun philosophizes.
Yes.
So it probably has connection with this.
Okay.
And probably is related to this number 2, the value of film or philosophy of education.
Yes. I think it enables you to think in terms of movement, and movement as mobile sections, instead of seeing units of frozen image added together.
And this is exactly what you mentioned this morning, or this probably later in the morning. You mentioned about being perceptive to the details of that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yes, you're right about that.
So paying attention to the details does not mean that you pay attention to each block, but to immerse yourself in the movement. So you try to just perceptive.
means like attentive.
Yes, attentive.
And then can I move on to could I move on to different issue? I mean, following to what Nako has said. And on the lunch table, we were talking, Nako, and me, were talking about how we can philosophize. Means so as Naoko just has said, how to say? Yeah, being attentive can be the attentiveness to different sets of details. However, what Cabell and you and then probably Naoko are saying is that we need to be attentive to the details in ordinary life, means the details which are not set up but more like something there. I cannot phrase well, but my question is how we can encounter the details or how can we attentive to the details of the ordinary life? I'm saying this because I use films in my class, which I teach, and then I try to write the cases of how to say, educational practice in my essays and papers, but I don't feel that I'm, especially in my papers, when I describe things referring to my own or someone's experience, educational experience, I am not quite sure if I'm doing philosophizing in the manner you talk.
Well, earlier today, thank you, Nami. Earlier today we talked about theory, didn't we? Theorization and abstraction. And we also talked about paying attention to detail and so on. Now, detail could have two meanings. It could mean looking at the individual items within a set, breaking down the set into its individual items and looking at them individually. Or it could mean looking at relations. So let me go back to the previous screen. And there's no doubt that there are 40 red Lego tiles there. Okay? We can count them. So one way of analysis shows us those individual units. Another way of analysis says, what do we see? And we see relations. We see things in mobile sections. We see things in relations. So to pay attention to the detail of reality, in ordinary life and actually generally, to pay attention to the detail of reality is not to say there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 40 red tiles, red Lego tiles. It's to say there is this combination, and there's this combination, and this sequence, and this sequence. So by attending to Michael Caine's expression, you're looking at a subtle change that happens in a sequence on the screen. You're not breaking it down into units, component parts. It may be true that there are 40 red, 40 green, but that's not the point. That's not the level at which meaning operates. Meaning operates like this, like a bracket over these different sections, where things are in movement. Movement is more fundamental than these static units.
And that makes contrast. That way of seeing the details in our ordinary life makes contrast to the psychologized
Yes.
way of looking
Yes.
at things, objectifying.
Yes, because psychologism, the bad version of psychology, tends to think that there must be basic measurable units, clearly identifiable units. Of course, I'm talking figuratively. The world isn't made up of Lego. Of course, this is all an image, but it's designed to get a contrast in metaphysics, really, a contrast in ways of understanding the nature of the real world. And film illustrates this semantic connection that I'm talking about. Anybody else?
I think the point of Nami's question, more fundamental question, is that how you can learn to pay attention to the details in such a way that you philosophize.
Well, it's very much what Andrew Cleven says to Stanley Cavell in the passage that I read, that it's very difficult. Stanley Cavell says it's very difficult to do that, to learn how to characterize something, how to, what's the word they use? Paraphrase, yes, to remember, to learn how to paraphrase something. And they agree it's very difficult. So how do you do it? Through gradual example, through seeing people describe something in a particular way, through someone saying, look at this detail, attend to this. See how when you look at this detail, it alters the appearance of the other side of the screen. Or if you bear in mind the music, how the action appears differently. So by having your attention drawn by a teacher, then you can gradually start to think in this way. And Wittgenstein says, you don't learn these things systematically, you learn them by giving the right tip. How do you say that in Japanese? Giving someone a tip, giving someone the right tip.
Yes. Yeah, and in order to grasp things in semantic connection, I think teachers require a certain kind of intuition, along with analytical mode of thinking.
Yes. And they need to unlearn some of the theory that they're made to learn. Because on the whole, when you're encouraged to theorize, you're encouraged to look at things systematically. And if you look at this systematically, then of course, you count all the red tiles, and you count all the green tiles, and you say there are 40 of each, or however many it is. As if that explains what we see. And it doesn't. What we see is something that's moving and dynamic and depends upon where your eye falls, which part you look at. If you see this section, it's different from seeing that section. Because this is green, red, 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 green, and that's red, 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 green, green. It's a different rhythm, and that's the way we pick up reality, in those movements.
I want to point to things, and I think if you ask how we can be attentive to the detail, I think the one point is that's the exact point Cavell want to raise about the conversation we have. We have a conversation, then someone, not me, may mention some point I didn't notice. Then I can learn something from it. That's the process. We can learn from the conversation something from it. That's the point. That's the first point. And the second point I want to mention is, I think it's on page 169, and I don't bother to read it. I can read it for you. And Cavell says, I think he says very accurately, says, including film and other great art, the proposal that everything matters, and you do not know what everything means. I think he described it very well.
Yes. Okay. 169.
Yeah. Yes. It's on page 169, and it's on third line.
Everything matters, and you do not know what everything means.
So the implication here, I think he takes from Wittgenstein, and here is you do not know what matters before you notice it, and what is there's no such systematical or theoretical frame to tell you or to secure the foundation, some sort of foundation that you can be attentive to the detail. You have to be noticed or to be noticed by someone. That's the point, I think.
Makes sense. More than the time when I read it on my own.
That's really nicely put, but it actually goes further than you've said, because what matters also is something that's revealed in conversation and that we explore in conversation, and it never comes to an end. This is what we're doing together in our lives, and human beings always do in some degree. By talking to one another, they explore what matters, and new possibilities, new ways of thinking come to light. And a work of art, like a film, or a novel, or a painting, provides something where we can respond and share those responses and agree about some things, and then try looking at things from a different angle, where Nami says one thing and then Sanae says something else, and it pushes us forward to different points of view on that thing, always opening to new possibilities. So that would be the kind of attention that I think he thinks is valuable.
And probably what you just mentioned, that things never comes to an end, is nicely illustrated by the ending of two films, in both films.
Oh, that's nice. Can you say a bit more, please?
In both films, dedicated Rita and the Gaslight, in the final scenes, for example, in the Gaslight, Paula and the detective sort of looking at the moon, the cloud of the moon being very clear, but you can't tell what's going to happen afterwards.
Yes.
So I think that what you can't tell what's going to happen in the future makes contrast to the very beginning of the scene when the old man told young Paula that don't see in the past, but see in the future. I think that the place of future in the ending of the film is different from the more sort of gloomy scene in the beginning.
Yes. Okay.
In more perfectionist sense, the ending of the film shows the answer will never comes to an end.
Yes.
And in Rita, likewise, you can't tell what's going to happen between these two people.
Yes. Okay.
And the answer is left with us, with the audience.
And the significance of the past is always being shifted by what happens in the future, isn't it? New things that happen make us see the past differently. For example, if a couple is married and they have a perfect marriage, and there's the assumption they will carry on together like that, but then suppose something goes wrong and they split up, then the whole story of their coming together feels quite different. Now, those wedding photographs don't mean the same thing as they did before. So the future has a bearing on the past. But the thing about the ending, it actually ties up with what you said earlier on about why Gregory says those things to Paula, because in a sense that opens something up for the audience, and we're dwelling on this to some extent. Why does he say those things? How does it alter our perception of his character? Because here at last we've got a kind of explanation for why he behaved as he did. And maybe it's an explanation of madness, as you said, I think, Sanae. He's acknowledging his own madness at that point, and that shifts our perception towards him, I think. And similarly with Rita, we don't know where she's going at the end, but we know she's going to carry on down the corridor. Okay, that's very good, thank you. Okay, I hope this doesn't seem irrelevant. It's an attempt to try to show these different possibilities of thought, which I think are so significantly realized in film, and which are really very important in philosophy. If you look at a philosopher like Dewey, for example, then he's certainly not looking at individual green tiles and red tiles. He's not breaking things down to an atomized reality. He's seeing things in terms of relation. Okay. Any more?
May I quickly but my thoughts are not so organized yet. But so yes, I saw the point you showed us to yes with these slides, and then the connection of this to philosophizing. And what I'm thinking now is that yes, I think I value the experience of philosophizing and seeing things. I want to value these perspectives in education, but however, this way of seeing things is not necessarily valued in conventional education, so that probably this type of education might make some conflict between conventional way of educating people and how, yes, I'm just thinking how I can put this in the educational environment which I belong to.
Okay. Well, let me say first of all that I'm not against planning courses, planning lessons. I'm not against assessment and so on. But the ways in which assessment and planning are conducted now, at least in some countries, are dominated by a kind of atomistic thought, breaking things down into individual units, and a desensitization to the relations between things. For teachers, they're dominated by ideas of behavioral management techniques rather than attending to the children they're dealing with in a more holistic way. Let's say.
So maybe my issue, my own issue, is how to share this perspective with perspectives with people who do speak different languages.
Yes. I wouldn't recommend that you talk to them about Lego tiles. Yes, okay. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. I think that's it, probably, don't you? So I hope you've got something from doing this and that you enjoy doing your assignments. Thanks for all your comments. Okay, goodbye. Bye.